An 82-year-old woman fainted from hunger on a wet bench, and Jesus Christ performed a miracle for her. The rain hammered down on Seattle that night, cold, relentless, merciless. And somewhere in Volunteer Park, an elderly woman was collapsing on a soaked wooden bench, unseen by the world, but not unseen by heaven. Because just moments before her final breath slipped away, Jesus Christ himself was already walking toward her. The city was sleeping under a heavy sheet of rain when Evelyn Brooks, 82 years old and exhausted beyond her limits, shuffled slowly up the dark path that cut through Volunteer Park. Seattle's wind sliced right through her thin sweater, chilling her bones until every step felt like dragging sandbags through a storm. Her shoes, if they could still be called shoes, were two broken pieces of leather held together by tape someone had given her weeks earlier. She carried nothing but a torn plastic bag and a small rosary missing two beads. It was all she had left from a life that once included a husband, 3 children, and a warm home in Montana. Now, after 4 years drifting through shelters, alleys, and doorways, hunger clung to her like a shadow. 3 days had passed without a single real meal. As the rain intensified, Evelyn's vision blurred. Streetlights smeared into ghostly halos. Her legs trembled violently. She whispered into the cold air, barely audible beneath the storm, "Lord Jesus, just a piece of bread. Please, just a little bread." She reached the wooden bench under an old maple tree. It was drenched rainwater pooling in every crack, yet rest was no longer optional. She lowered herself with a soft groan, the soaked wood freezing against her frail body. For a moment she looked up at the sky, her silver hair plastered to her face, her breath shallow and ragged. "Jesus, I'm so tired," she said, tears mixing with the rain. Then her head tilted to the side. Her hand slipped from her lap. The rosary fell to the ground. And Evelyn Brooks, an 82-year-old woman who had once believed she still had a purpose, collapsed into unconsciousness on that wet bench, moments away from death. What Evelyn could not see, what no one else could see yet, was that something supernatural had already begun moving toward her through the rain. Because when the world turns its face away from the forgotten, Jesus Christ always arrives first. The storm that swallowed Evelyn Brooks on that cold Seattle night was only the last chapter of a much longer tragedy, one that began hundreds of miles away, under a calmer sky in rural Montana. Long before she ever touched a park bench in Volunteer Park, Evelyn had lived a life that looked nothing like the desperate figure the city would one day ignore. She grew up in a small Catholic town outside Billings, the kind where neighbors still waved from porches and the church bell marked the rhythm of life. Evelyn was the youngest of 5 children, raised by parents who worked the land and taught their kids that faith was not something spoken, it was something lived. Every night before bed, her mother would gather the children around a wooden crucifix and whisper the same prayer. "Jesus is always closer than the world believes." Those words would follow Evelyn long after childhood. At 21, she married John Brooks, a gentle rail worker with strong hands and a quiet laugh. Together they built a modest life, nothing fancy, but deeply rooted. Their small home smelled of cinnamon on winter mornings, and in the summers, laundry flapped on the line like little flags of peace. They raised 3 children: Michael, the adventurous firstborn; Linda, sharp and sensitive; and Grace, the baby of the family whose smile could soften any bad day. Every Sunday they filled the same pew at Our Lady of Peace Catholic Church. Evelyn sang hymns softly, her voice trembling with emotion as her children leaned sleepily against her shoulders. There were family dinners, Christmas mornings, 4th of July cookouts, those ordinary golden memories that no one notices until they're gone. But life has a way of breaking even the strongest stories. John died first. A truck accident on the highway during a winter storm left him pinned beneath twisted metal. At 49, Evelyn became a widow. Her children, already grown, promised they would take care of her. But promises, no matter how sincere, can shatter under pressure. Michael moved to California chasing construction work and slowly drifted out of contact. Months became years. Years became silence. Linda fell into a toxic marriage where her husband forbade her from seeing her mother. Fear kept her hidden behind locked doors and excuses. And Grace Sweet. Bright Grace fought cancer with everything she had, but the disease took her at 36. Evelyn held her daughter's hand as the monitors went silent, and the grief hollowed out rooms inside her that nothing could ever fill. Medical bills drained Evelyn's savings. Rent climbed, work became impossible, and one quiet afternoon, with nowhere else to go and no family left to receive her, she folded her few belongings into a single bag and stepped out onto the streets. What she didn't know then was that this descent into hunger, loneliness, and cold pavements would someday lead her to the edge of a miracle, one she never could have imagined back when Montana's church bells still rang for her. By the time Evelyn reached the northern edge of Volunteer Park, hunger had become something more than a physical need. It was a sharp, twisting agony that blurred her thoughts and hollowed out her strength. For 3 days she had eaten nothing, nothing but hope, nothing but prayer. And even hope, under rain that cold, felt like it was slipping from her fingers. Seattle's downpour intensified, rattling the branches of the old maples and turning every pathway into a glistening river. Cars in the distance hissed across wet asphalt, their sound faint compared to the roar of the storm pressing against the park. Evelyn's frail figure staggered beneath it, one step at a time, her thin sweater clinging to her like a soaked shroud. She stopped beneath a flickering lamppost, blinking hard as her vision danced in and out of focus. The world swayed. Her heartbeat thumped unevenly slow, then fast, then frighteningly shallow. She pressed her hand against her chest, whispering a shaky plea that vanished in the wind. Jesus, I can't take much more. Please. Just a little help. Her shoes, split at the seams, filled with icy water. Each step sent pain shooting up her legs. Her fingers, stiff from cold, struggled to hold the torn plastic bag she'd been carrying since Montana. She had long forgotten what used to be inside it. Photos, a sweater, a Bible all lost somewhere between shelters and alleyways. Tonight the bag was nothing but a ghost of the life she once had. Lightning cracked over the city. Evelyn flinched and instinctively looked for a place to sit, anywhere to give her trembling legs a moment's mercy. That was when she saw it, a wooden bench beneath a sprawling tree. The bench was soaked, rainwater pooling across its surface, but exhaustion overruled every other instinct. She shuffled toward it, her knees buckling with each step. The moment she reached the bench, her body surrendered. She collapsed onto the wet wood, breathing in short, painful gasps. Water seeped into her clothes instantly, chilling her spine, but she barely noticed. The world around her dimmed into a fog. Evelyn tilted her face upward, letting rain mix with the tears she no longer tried to hide. If you can hear me, Jesus, please don't leave me alone tonight. A sudden wave of dizziness washed over her. The lamplight smeared like melted gold. Her hand slipped from her lap, her rosary falling silently onto the ground. Her body leaned sideways. Her breath thinned. Her heartbeat fluttered like a bird trapped in a box. Then, without a cry, without a final word, Evelyn Brooks slid into unconsciousness. Her frail frame sprawled across a rain-soaked bench under a tree in Seattle's darkest hour. The park remained silent, empty, cold, indifferent. But heaven was already watching. While Evelyn lay motionless on that rain-soaked bench, the city around her continued its routine, unaware that a miracle was drawing near. But heaven had already chosen someone, an ordinary man living an ordinary life, to play an extraordinary role. Frank Miller, 55 years old, was finishing his overnight shift as a security guard at Seattle General Hospital. He was a quiet man, the kind neighbors waved to but never really knew. A father of 2 grown sons, a husband to a woman who always prepared his coffee at dawn, Frank lived a life of small routines, steady, ample, faithful. Every morning after work before heading home, he stopped by St. Anne's Parish for the 6:30 Mass. It was his anchor, his promise to God that even in a noisy world, he would keep a space for silence. And so, despite the storm, Frank cut through Volunteer Park like he always did, his black umbrella shaking under the weight of the rain. His boots splashed through puddles as he mentally rehearsed his morning. Get to church, go home, kiss his wife, fix the leak in the laundry room. Nothing unusual, nothing dramatic, until he saw it. At first, it looked like a heap of clothes abandoned on a bench, just another forgotten shape in a city full of sorrows. Frank nearly walked past it, but something tugged at him, something deeper than instinct. He slowed, squinted through the rain, and felt his heart lurch. It wasn't a bundle of clothes. It was an elderly woman. Frank rushed toward the bench, dropping his umbrella without thinking. Rain pounded his back as he knelt beside her. Her head hung at an unnatural angle, her lips pale, her breath so shallow he could barely see her chest move. "Ma'am? Ma'am, can you hear me?" His voice cracked with urgency. No response. He pressed trembling fingers to her wrist. A pulse weak, faint, fading. Frank fumbled for his phone, dialing 911 with wet hands. "Emergency. Please, an elderly woman's unconscious at Volunteer Park. She's freezing. I think she's dying." The dispatcher's voice tried to steady him, but Frank's racing heartbeat drowned it out. After ending the call, he shrugged off his denim jacket and wrapped it around Evelyn's frail body. Then he pulled off his sweater and tucked it beneath her head. The cold sliced into him, soaking through his shirt, but he didn't care. He clasped her icy hand between both of his, bowed his head, and whispered the only thing he could offer in that moment. "Our Father, who art in heaven." His voice trembled, but his faith did not. He prayed through the roar of the storm, through the ache in his knees, through the rising fear that help might not arrive in Timmy. Somewhere between those whispered words, something shifted, something he couldn't explain yet, something not of this world. Because unbeknownst to Frank Miller, as he prayed for a stranger on a soaked bench in Seattle, Jesus Christ was already stepping into the rain. The rain should have swallowed every sound in the park, yet in the space where Frank knelt beside the unconscious woman, something strange began to happen. The storm didn't stop. It simply shifted. The downpour that hammered the trees and flooded the pathways softened around the bench, as if held back by an unseen hand. Frank didn't notice it at first. His eyes were shut tight, his voice barely above a whisper, as he clung to Evelyn's cold fingers and prayed, "Give us this day our daily bread." And then he felt it. A warmth, a presence, a stillness that didn't belong to any storm. Frank opened his eyes. Just several yards away, between the tall, dripping maples, a figure stood. A man, but not a man shaped by this world. He wore a white robe that glowed softly, emitting a light that didn't merely reflect off the rain. It pushed the rain aside. Water cascaded around him, but not a single drop touched his shoulders. His face shone with a serenity deeper than peace, a beauty not built from features, but from love itself. Frank's breath caught. His chest tightened. Tears sprang to his eyes without permission. His entire being recognized who stood before him, long before his mind could form the words. The figure walked toward them, each step silent, sacred. The air warmed with every footfall. The rain slowed further, drifting aside like a respectful curtain. When he reached the bench, Jesus Christ knelt beside Evelyn Brooks. His hand, brighter than the storm, gentler than the wind, touched her forehead. The moment his skin met hers, a soft golden light blossomed beneath his palm, spreading like warm fire through her body. It flowed to her cheeks, turning their gray pallor into a faint rose hue. It wrapped around her chest, easing her shallow breaths into steady rhythm. It reached her hands, warming them until the trembling stilled. Jesus leaned close to her ear and spoke with a voice soft enough to calm oceans, yet powerful enough to reshape eternity. "Evelyn, I have not forgotten you." At the sound of her name, the air vibrated with tenderness. "Rest, daughter. Hunger ends today. Pain ends today. Loneliness ends today." Frank watched, unable to speak, unable to move. He could only weep. The warmth grew brighter, enveloping Evelyn in a cocoon of divine presence. Jesus then lifted her frail hand, holding it with a reverence reserved for priceless things. And then he looked at Frank. Not just at his face, at his soul. A smile formed gentle, knowing, overflowing with gratitude not human but heavenly. "Thank you," Jesus said, his voice like a church bell echoing through Frank's chest. "Thank you for caring for the least of my children." The words shook Frank to the core. Before he could respond, the golden light intensified. Frank shut his eyes, and when he opened them again, Jesus was gone. The rain had returned. But the miracle was only beginning. When the last trace of the golden light faded, Frank was left kneeling in the rain, shaking, breathless, unsure if his heart would ever beat the same way again. But something else had changed, something far more immediate. Evelyn Brooks, who moments earlier had been lifeless in his arms, began to stir. Her eyelids fluttered like someone waking from a deep, peaceful sleep rather than the edge of death. Her fingers twitched. A long, steady breath filled her lungs full, strong, alive. Frank leaned in, stunned by the color returning to her cheeks, the warmth spreading through her skin. Then he noticed it. There, resting gently on her lap, wrapped in a pristine white cloth, completely dry despite the rain, was a round loaf of bread. Steam curled from its surface, rising into the air like a visible prayer. It wasn't just warm. It was freshly baked, golden, soft, smelling of wheat and something sweeter, something holy. Frank touched it with trembling fingertips and recoiled. It was hot, as if it had been pulled from an oven seconds ago. His voice cracked. "Ma'am, you're breathing. You're—" But Evelyn opened her eyes before he could finish. They were clearer than they had been in years, shimmering with a peace that didn't belong to someone who had just been dying on a bench. "He was here," she whispered, her voice frail but steady. "Jesus, he was here." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. The ambulance raced up the park path, lights flashing through the rain. Paramedics rushed toward them, expecting a critical emergency. But the scene they arrived to made them hesitate. The first medic knelt, placing 2 fingers against Evelyn's neck. "Huh. Strong pulse," he murmured. "Really strong." Another checked her breathing. Normal respirations. A little high, actually. A third placed a thermometer under her tongue. When it beeped, he frowned. 98.6. That's impossible. In this weather, she should be severely hypothermic. They exchanged looks, not skeptical, but unsettled. Something wasn't adding up. Inside the ambulance, tests continued. Blood pressure, oxygen levels, heart rate. Every measurement came back perfect. Not barely surviving, not stabilized, perfect. "She's healthier than most 60-year-olds, one medic muttered, shaking his head. At the hospital, things grew even stranger. Blood tests, normal. Hydration levels, normal. Nutrient panel, normal. No signs of starvation. No signs of exposure. No signs she had been unconscious minutes earlier. Dr. Mariah Collins, a seasoned physician known for her calm logic, looked at the results with disbelief. "There is no medical explanation for this," she told her team. None. Meanwhile, Evelyn sat upright in her hospital bed, hands gently resting on the warm loaf of bread like it was the rarest treasure on earth. She barely touched the meal they offered because, as she explained softly, "The bread he gave me, it filled me completely." Doctors had no words, but Evelyn did. "It was Jesus. He came to me, and he gave me this." Science stood silent. Only faith could speak next. In the hours following Evelyn's admission to Seattle General Hospital, news of her condition should have remained just another quiet note in the endless rhythm of emergency room life. But heaven had different plans, and sometimes all it takes is one photo, one moment of grace captured by human hands to ignite a national awakening. It was Nurse Alicia Ramirez, a young woman on her 2nd year at the hospital, who first noticed something extraordinary. During her rounds, she saw Evelyn sitting upright in bed, wrapped in a warm hospital blanket, cradling the round loaf of bread in her lap, as though it were fragile glass. The cloth around it remained spotless and impossibly dry, untouched by the rain that had soaked everything else. Her face, it glowed, not with makeup or lighting, but with peace. A peace Alicia had never seen on someone who had arrived half dead only hours before. Compelled by something she couldn't explain, Alicia lifted her phone and snapped a picture. She typed a simple caption. This woman was found unconscious from hunger in a storm, but when she arrived, she was completely healthy. She says Jesus Christ visited her and gave her this bread. I don't know what happened, but I believe in miracles. Do you? She posted it on Facebook at 10:14 a.m. By 11 a.m., it had 3,000 shares. By noon, 20,000. By evening, the entire nation was talking. The hashtags exploded. Number: Miracle of Volunteer Park. Number: Jesus visits Seattle. Number: Bread from Heaven. Number: Evelyn Brooks story. Local news picked it up first, then regional stations, then national networks, CNN, Fox News, ABC. Even small-town radio hosts wanted to know about the elderly woman who came back from death with a miracle loaf of bread. Outside the hospital, crowds began to gather. Some came to pray, others came out of curiosity. Some brought food, clothes, money, blankets, anything they believed might help someone who had suffered alone. Inside, reporters requested interviews. The hospital director, Dr. Karen Whitfield, finally organized a press briefing. "We ran every test we could," she said, standing before a sea of cameras. "Her vitals, her hydration, her nutrients, everything is normal. Scientifically, there is no explanation." A reporter raised his hand. "Is it true she claims Jesus Christ appeared to her?" Dr. Whitfield hesitated, then spoke with honesty rather than caution. "She claims it, and I can't disprove it." The internet erupted. But nothing electrified the country more than the interview recorded by Channel 7 News, conducted by reporter Hannah Collins. Sitting in her hospital bed, Evelyn looked into the camera with eyes steady and bright. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with truth. "I was dying," she said, "and Jesus came to me. He held me. He told me he hadn't forgotten me, and he gave me bread, warm bread, and hope again." Millions watched. Millions cried. Millions believed. But even those who didn't believe couldn't look away. The miracle of Volunteer Park had begun its journey across America, and it wasn't done yet. The media frenzy grew louder with each passing day, but inside room 312 of Seattle General Hospital, the atmosphere was quiet, sacred, even. Evelyn Brooks spent her afternoon sitting peacefully by the window, hands resting on the warm loaf of bread wrapped in its white cloth, speaking softly with visitors who felt drawn to her story. Some came to offer help, some came to ask for prayer, some came simply because they felt something awakening inside them. But among all the faces that passed through those doors, two strangers would change Evelyn's life more than any headline ever could. They arrived on a Sunday afternoon. Robert and Melissa Thompson, a couple in their early 60s, owners of a small chain of family-run bakeries throughout the Seattle area. Robert was tall and broad-shouldered, with hands that had kneaded dough for 40 years. Melissa had gentle eyes and a voice that carried warmth like a fresh loaf straight from the oven. They stood at the doorway for a moment, unsure whether to enter. Evelyn looked up and smiled. "Come in," she said softly, as though she had been expecting them. Robert and Melissa approached her bed, exchanging glances filled with something deeper than curiosity, something like conviction. "We saw your interview," Melissa began, struggling to steady her voice. "We saw the bread, and we prayed." She swallowed. "We prayed hard." Robert nodded. "We owned Thompson's Bakery, and for years we felt God telling us to do something more, something bigger than ourselves." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Your story shook us. It woke something up." Evelyn tilted her head slightly, listening with the gentle attention of someone who had spent a lifetime holding people's pain. Melissa took Evelyn's hands in hers. "We want to offer you a home," she said, tears welling. "Not a room, not a rental. A home. Ours. We have an extra bedroom. Our kids are grown. The house is too quiet. And we believe God is asking us to welcome you as family." Evelyn blinked, stunned. The thought of being wanted, truly wanted, felt almost unreal after so many years of invisibility. "But that's too much," she whispered. "No," Robert replied, his voice firm but kind. "It's exactly what Jesus told us to do." He reached into his coat and pulled out a folder with blueprints inside. "We also want to do something in your honor," he added. "We want to open a community kitchen, a place where anyone, homeless, struggling, forgotten, can come and eat freely, where they can sit at real tables, use real silverware, be treated like honored guests. A place that reflects what Jesus did for you." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. Melissa squeezed her hand. "And we want you to help lead it, to greet people, to pray for them, to tell them your story. You don't owe us work. You don't owe us anything. But if you want purpose, if you want family, we're here." For a moment, Evelyn couldn't speak. The stormy nights, the empty stomach, the cold benches, the years of feeling forgotten. All of it had led to this, not just a miracle of survival, but a miracle of belonging. With trembling lips, she whispered the only word she could manage. "Yes. And heaven, no doubt," whispered it back. The plan that began in a quiet hospital room soon took physical form in one of Seattle's older neighborhoods, Capitol Hill, where a shuttered bakery sat unused, its faded sign trembling slightly in the wind. Robert and Melissa Thompson bought the property within weeks, and from that moment forward, the building became the heartbeat of a new mission. The locals first noticed contractors repainting the exterior, replacing broken windows, hauling in lumber and stainless steel counters. They didn't know it yet, but they were witnessing the birth of something sacred. By early spring, the doors finally opened to the public. Above them, in fresh bold letters, hung the name chosen by everyone involved, the Miracle Bench Kitchen, a tribute to the storm-soaked bench where Evelyn had nearly taken her last breath and where Jesus Christ himself had met her. Inside, the atmosphere didn't resemble a soup line or a shelter cafeteria. It was warm, intentional, dignified. Long wooden tables filled the room, set with real plates and metal silverware. The walls glowed in earthy tones, adorned with murals of wheat fields and scripture verses. Behind the serving counter, a large inscription stretched across the wall in elegant gold lettering, "Where no one sees you, Jesus arrives first." Visitors often stopped to read it twice. Meals were prepared fresh every morning: soups, casseroles, warm bread, roasted vegetables, always enough for anyone who walked through the door. But the food, good as it was, wasn't the true miracle. It was the way people were treated the moment they entered. No numbers, no lines, no plastic trays. Every guest was invited to sit, rest, talk, and be served by volunteers who looked them in the eyes and called them by name. And every day, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., Evelyn Brooks sat at a small wooden table near the entrance. Her posture was frail, but her presence carried a quiet authority. People naturally gravitated toward her: homeless veterans, runaway teens, single mothers, men battling addiction. They came for food but stayed for her kindness. Evelyn listened to every story. She prayed for those who asked. Some at times she simply held a hand and let silence do the healing. There were moments when someone would sit across from her, shoulders shaking, shame thick in their voice, and Evelyn would whisper the words Jesus once whispered to her: "You're not forgotten." Not for 1 minute. Word spread quickly. Volunteers poured in: college students, retired nurses, church groups from across the city. Donations arrived daily. Even local businesses partnered to supply ingredients, clothing, and toiletries. Soon, the Miracle Bench Kitchen became more than a place to eat. It became a refuge. People who came broken left with dignity restored. Some found employment through contacts made at the kitchen. Others entered rehab programs, reunited with family, or discovered faith for the first time. In a city often overwhelmed by homelessness and hardship, this small kitchen radiated a different kind of power, one born from compassion, from generosity, and from a miracle that began on a park bench in the pouring rain. And at the center of it all sat Evelyn, living proof that one encounter with Jesus Christ can transform not only a single life, but an entire community. The miracle that saved Evelyn Brooks's life did more than lift one woman off a rain-soaked bench. It began stitching together pieces of a family long scattered across the country. And as the Miracle Bench Kitchen grew, so did the quiet ripples of restoration Jesus Christ had set in motion. It started with a phone call. One crisp September afternoon, while Evelyn sat greeting guests near the entrance of the kitchen, her donated cell phone buzzed with an unfamiliar California number. She hesitated, then answered. A trembling voice broke through. "Mom? Mom, is that you?" The room seemed to tilt. It was Michael, her oldest son, the one who had left for construction jobs decades ago, then drifted into silence as life consumed him. He had seen her story on TV while sitting alone in a Sacramento motel. He'd watched the interview where she spoke about loneliness, faith, and Jesus giving her bread, and something inside him shattered. "I'm so sorry," he cried, "for all the years, for not being there." Evelyn pressed her hand against her heart. Tears slid down her cheeks. "Son, you're forgiven. Come home." 3 days later, Michael arrived in Seattle. When he walked into the kitchen and saw his mother standing there, frailer but radiant, he ran to her like a child. They held each other so tightly, guests stopped eating and quietly wiped their own eyes. But the miracle didn't stop there. 2 months later, a battered woman and 2 children stepped through the front door. It was Linda, Evelyn's daughter, escaping an abusive marriage. She had seen articles online about the Miracle Bench Kitchen and realized her mother was not only alive but healing others. She fell to her knees at Evelyn's feet, sobbing apologies. Evelyn pulled her close, whispering, "You're home now. You're safe." And then, in a moment that felt scripted by heaven itself, a young social work intern named Anna Brooks arrived to volunteer. Her paperwork listed a familiar last name. A gentle conversation revealed the truth. She was Grace's daughter, Evelyn's granddaughter lost to the family after Grace's early death. When Anna realized who Evelyn was, she collapsed into her grandmother's arms, both crying as though years of grief were being washed clean in one embrace. Now reunited, the Brooks family served shoulder to shoulder in the kitchen. Michael repaired walls and roofs. Linda organized meal services. Anna coordinated outreach programs. Together, they turned one miracle into thousands. Within 5 years, 12 Miracle Bench kitchens opened across Washington state, each one carrying the same golden inscription on the wall. Where no one sees you, Jesus arrives first. Evelyn, now 87, still sat at the entrance of the original kitchen 3 days a week, greeting every soul with the same gentle smile. Reporters worldwide sought her story, churches invited her to speak, and documentaries chronicled her life. Yet she remained humble, insisting the real hero was Jesus Christ, the one who finds the forgotten and brings them home. Her legacy became this. One miracle didn't just save her life. It restored a family. It awakened a community. And it spread across a nation, hungry for hope. As her story continues to inspire countless people across America, let this be a reminder. Jesus Christ still moves, still heals, still restores, and often, he arrives long before anyone else does. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Jesus Christ Encounters for more true stories of miracles and faith.